सेव किया था ना?
मैं सिर्फ इसलिए गया था क्योंकि उसने मुझे कॉल किया, that's it. But listen तो.
Save it for someone else.
जिंदगी में सेव करना जरूरी है, मगर जब बात पैसों की हो, सिर्फ सेविंग से काम नहीं चलेगा। इक्विटी म्यूचुअल फंड्स में इन्वेस्ट कीजिए और अपने सेविंग्स को आगे बढ़ने का मौका दीजिए।
Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme-related documents carefully.
It's become an everyday experience in India. Each day, there's a new call for a ban, a protest of some kind. Some movie has offended people. Some book is offensive. Now, it's now got to the stage where you don't actually have to see the movie to be offended. People ask for films to be banned even before the films are released. For instance, politicians called for a ban on Pathan long before its release because they'd seen a picture in which the heroine was wearing a saffron bikini and they said, this is obviously an affront to Hinduism. Or take a film like Padmavati, later renamed Padmavat. Nobody knew what the film was about. The script had not been published. It was still being shot. Even then, people invaded the set. They disrupted the shooting. They threatened to create problems when the film was released. Why? Because they said they were going to be offended. How did they know? How were they so sure they were going to be offended? We don't know. We don't care. That's become the Indian way. And lest you think it's just lunatics or even Hindu fundamentalists who are doing the protesting, it's not. It comes from all over. And it started really with the government of India. There's a long and dishonorable tradition in India of the government banning things. Jawaharlal Nehru's government banned books. Rajiv Gandhi banned the satanic verse as well. Technically, he only banned its import, but effectively he banned it in response to demands from Muslim organizations. The list is endless. Governments are only too willing to ban things. And people petition governments to do it. For instance, it's bizarre, though Jesus Christ Superstar, the play, has been staged by Indian groups all over India. The film of the play has not been released in India. Why? Well, because Christian groups objected. Or take the Da Vinci Code, a film made by Christians, watched by Christians all over the world. Indian Christian groups objected, saying it insulted Christianity. The government, I think, would have been inclined to give way, but the censor board, headed in those days by Sharmila Tagore, held firm and the ban was denied. Why do we keep asking for bans? Well, and because these demands are now so commonplace, liberals feel obliged to oppose them. Liberals, and I include myself in this number, always say that people have freedom of expression. If you feel that that expression is going to offend you, don't see the movie, don't read the book, stay at home, watch television instead, play carom with your children, do something else, but don't prevent other people from seeing a film. Don't censor a filmmaker's right to expression. That's become like an established principle of Indian liberalism, and it's been put to the test lately. The first occasion was the Kashmir files. Many liberals found that offensive. Many liberals said the film didn't actually depict the truth. Other people said that the film was biased in favor of one community and against another community. Despite that, most liberals I know, and myself included, said, look, the filmmaker's made a film. He has a statement. He has a position. You should allow him to make it. All talk of banning this is nonsense. And there was no ban on the film. There wasn't even a serious demand. There's been another controversy now with the Kerala story. It's been banned, for instance, in West Bengal. And the argument is that the story is fictitious, that the claims it makes about how many women were converted by jihadis or kidnapped by jihadis or whatever are excessive. And indeed, the filmmakers have reduced the excessive claims that they've made. But should that film be banned? I, like all other liberals, say that even if the content is offensive, even if it's objectionable, it's this guy's point of view. You and I may think he's a bigot, but he's got a perfect right to his view. He's got a perfect right to make that film. It's crazy and illiberal to ban it. The next liberal argument is this, that if you keep banning things, if you keep denying people the right to free speech, aren't you in a sense becoming what you oppose? You say you're opposing fascists or dictators or authoritarians. And yet, if you yourself are sitting around censoring people and saying their film should be banned, you're no better than them. It's a consensus that I am proud to say has endured. In the case of the Kerala story, Shashi Tharoor, who's an MP from Kerala and has many objections to the film, has made it very clear that he doesn't want it banned. Shabana Azmi, who's one of our best-known actresses, has tweeted to say she doesn't want the film banned. I always appreciate the fact that liberals have stuck to their principles. It's easy to stick to your principles when it's something you agree with. But the true test of your commitment to your principles is when you use them to defend something you don't like or don't agree with. And on that score, liberals, I think, have done very impressively. But if you look at social media and if you look at the way people have responded to liberal positions, questions are being asked. The first question is this. It's okay for you liberals to pat yourselves on your backs and say, look, we're so liberal, we'll let this happen. But do you realize what the effect of these films will be? Do you realize that what they're doing effectively is targeting a particular community? And let's be honest, all these protests, all these bans are usually about politics, is related to religion or about identity politics. So in this case, they say, these are films that target Indian Muslims, that begin a process or continue a process of othering them, of making them out to be the enemy. Do you think it's okay for that to happen just because you're liberals and you're wonderful ivory towers? What happens when our children go to school? What happens when other children treat them as jihadis or enemies of the Indian state because they've been brainwashed by seeing films like this? I think that's one objection that I've come across a lot. There's a second objection, and it's a rephrasing of a traditional objection. Whenever liberals allow free speech, and they give the platform of free speech to people who many people would regard as being ultra-right-wing authoritarian, the criticism is, are you going to allow people who want to destroy a free society, a liberal society, a platform within a liberal society? Surely the liberal society is not so suicidal that it invites people to come and attack it. It's a valid argument. It's an argument the liberals have grappled with around the world for decades now. But in India, you have a variation of that argument. And the argument now is, India is a secular, diverse, pluralistic country. Are you going to allow people who have no respect for secularism, no interest in diversity, and who want to destroy Indian pluralism, are you going to allow them to spread this kind of hatred throughout India? I don't know if liberals have an answer to it. My answer, and I've all consistently stood up for liberal values, is that yes, there are dangers in letting people speak freely. There are dangers in letting a point of view that is different from yours be broadcast openly. But ultimately, the greater principle is worth it. You cannot afford to compromise on free expression. You must allow people to say what they want. You must end this business of banning things. But of late, as I've heard these objections, while I'm still not entirely convinced by them, I think they deserve to be heard. The argument is this. In fact, it is that you are happy to say that the Kashmir files or the Kerala story is okay because, yeah, maybe some Muslims are the villains, but it's not really an attack on the Muslim community as a whole as such. So don't react like that. But what happens at the next step? Because, say, the Kerala story has been eagerly embraced by this government. The Prime Minister has quoted it on the campaign trail. More films like this will come. If these films keep coming, will you just sit back and say, hey guys, go ahead and attack secularism. We're liberals, so we enjoy that. And what happens when they go further? When the attacks on Muslims are more pointed? When the othering of Muslims goes ahead and becomes more offensive? Are you then going to object? If you're going to object, then on what grounds will you object? On what grounds will you say it was okay up to a point, but it's now gone too far? There are no objective criteria. And if you don't stop it now, if you don't protest now, it will go on and on. It will go on and on in a way that seriously impacts the fabric of Indian society and which makes Indian Muslims extremely unhappy and targets them. On what basis will you say this much was okay, but this much is not okay? Who are you to decide? What are the objective criteria? These are valid arguments. They're not arguments I would advance myself, and they're not arguments I necessarily believe in. But I think it's time for us to reconsider this liberal approach of anyone can say what they like, because that's all about freedom of speech. There are examples from history. Many people have quoted on Twitter and will quote whenever you discuss it with them, the example of Nazi Germany. Popular media was used in the case of Nazi Germany. Books were written attacking the Jews, making them out to be bloodsuckers who had stolen the wealth and destroyed the spirit of the Aryan nation. Much before the discrimination began, the Jews had already been othered, had been turned into villains in the public mind. So when the discrimination and the persecution began, it was that much easier. Or take the case of America, where until the civil rights movement really took off in the 1960s, Hollywood continued to portray black people as not the equal of white people, as being somehow stupid and not as bright as white people, which did immense damage to the fabric of American society and to black people. So, say the critics, there are examples from history, examples that show you that yes, liberalism is great, and yes, free speech is great. But a society is built on plurality, on diversity. When you allow one person in a society or one group in a society to attack the other, then aren't you attacking the very basis of that society? Aren't you setting the stage for more serious persecution, for more serious discrimination? It's not an argument I think we can dismiss. I'm not convinced by it. But maybe it's time for us to reconsider. Maybe it's time for us to think about it. Of course, the Nazi Germany parallels are overblown. I don't accept them. But there are parallels surely around the world with the othering of communities. India has survived. It's what it is because we've all worked together in harmony and in peace. If you allow various people to use media, social media, popular media, cinema, literature, to vilify a certain community, will that diversity last? Will India last? Or will we be destroyed by tensions from within? Well, so far at least, I am with all the liberals, the Shashi Tharoors, the Shabana Azmis. I don't believe that film should be banned. I believe that people have free expression. But yes, I think the time has come to debate this. The other side, people who believe that films that spread hatred should be banned or censored, do have a point. It's not a point I accept, but it's a point we should consider.